Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nayuka Gorrie. I'm a Gunai Konai Gunitjmara Wiradjuri and Yorta Yorta mum, writer and performer. I'd like to acknowledge that the land we are on is Aboriginal land, and I'd like to acknowledge the ongoing ownership and connections that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have over our collective lands. I'd also like to acknowledge that this week is Trans Awareness Week, and that the Trans Day of Remembrance is coming up in a few days. And I'd like to acknowledge that trans women are particularly targeted with violence, whether it's state violence, interpersonal violence, intimate partner violence. And they're a critical part of this conversation. In the interest of transparency, this is actually the first event I've spoken at since I gave birth to my twins nearly a year ago. And up until about a few minutes ago, I was fighting off a little panic attack because I found it, I don't know if anyone else has been like this, maybe it's the whole global pandemic thing, but I've been finding it really difficult to kind of write or think because my brain isn't working like it used to work before the babies and before 2020, really. And it's been weird because in my professional life, I write about like state violence a lot and colonialism and queer politics and, you know, also comedy in my performance. But I've been finding this really, really hard. And I'm kind of racking my brain as to why that is. When I was asked to do this, a part of me kind of recoiled because, not because I don't think events like this aren't important, they really, really are. And the pandemic and people being locked in their homes and the kind of carceral response has shown us that how important more than ever that we need to be addressing the prevention of violence against women. But I guess I was sort of a bit nervous because I didn't think that I'd really have anything special or interesting or even remotely informative to offer, like a bunch of professionals. But then I kind of interrogated that thought and was also talked down by the excellent staff and realised, like, actually that's pretty baseless. And like the more that I have thought about it, the more I've realised that family violence has really shaped and has been a foundational part of my life, for better or for worse. I've actually spent a significant portion of my life thinking about violence and violence against women. When I was a kid, my mum was in a very physically abusive relationship with my younger brother and sister's father. They were together from the time that I was about 9 months old until I was 5 or 5 and a bit. And it's strange because generally I have this almost impeccable long-term memory, but from that period of being a little kid, I can only remember sort of bits and pieces. And my memory mostly starts from when I was about 6 or 7. I think on the most part, I'm intact from the trauma of it all. Or at least I think I am, until I hear men raise their voices or watch women being hurt on screen or by men, or see, you know, hear neighbours having a fight, and suddenly I'm like 5 again. Anyway, I've obviously turned out okay because we escaped this man, and in order to escape, we had to leave our country on Gunai Konai land and moved to Bundaberg, which is Gureng country. And this experience has really rattled our family in ways that aren't always really, really obvious. And they've shaped us, but we're also in a way kind of thriving and still doing our thing. And I don't really know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with those 5 years. And I've been thinking about it more and more because I'm a parent now. And I see, like, yeah, kind of raising these 2 little people. It's weird. I can't imagine being violent, but anyway, here we are. So growing up with that man in this foundational part of our life, in all honesty, in my mind, I built him up to be this grotesque sort of monster. He was like the devil when I was growing up. In my mind, I gave him a lot of power, and he couldn't be vanquished. He was really violent, and he was just this unstoppable force in my mind. And then when I was like a teenager, I'm probably not the only like child survivor to have thought this, but I would fantasize about like killing him, setting his house on fire, stabbing him, getting my weapons license and shooting him. I don't know why I needed a license to do that. I just thought that, if I was going to shoot him, I should at least be, above board administratively. That's a bad joke. Anyway, I don't think about those things anymore. Like, it's changed in the last few years, and it's really hard to pinpoint the exact moment when I stopped wanting to kill him. I don't know if like my politic changed, or if I'd healed a bit more, or if time had sort of, I don't know, healed things. But lately stories about him have been getting back to our family in sort of dribs and drabs. The most recent thing that I heard about him was that he was getting around on a bike, and has like an ice and alcohol addiction. And when I heard that, my heart kind of broke, because I'd built him up to be this monster in my mind, and he was this monster, for a 4-year-old. But now I don't really imagine him like that. I feel almost like sorry for him, and I no longer want to kill him, which is good, whatever. What I mostly want from him is to be healed, and I've realized that I actually want this for all men who've hurt me. For a long time, I wanted, my brother and sister are the same. Like, we absolutely detest violence against women, and bystander effect is just not a thing that exists in our family, probably to our detriment. I'm a big Dory. I need to know what's going on if I need to intervene, and it's probably going to get me hurt one day. But for a long time, I wanted all of these men who hurt their partners to be punished and thrown in jail or taken out bush and flogged. And that was until I saw the boys that I grew up with, who grew into teenagers and men, start to hurt their partners. And I realized these were like boys and men that I loved, still very much love, and am disappointed by. So now I have like this vested interest in, well, what can we do how do we stop this from happening? For every single one of those boys, I've run the numbers. Every single one of them had seen their mum be harmed by their father or stepfather. And they've all gone on to do the same things as their dad. And I've since watched quite a few of them cycle in and out of prison. And once they've been in there, they come out more violent than when they went in. And I've realized that we sort of do this en masse to people. We want to see these people punished, or maybe we think that by sending them to prison will kind of make them better, or, for a lot of people, actually, them being in prison represents safety because they're no longer a threat. We had to take off 2 states away, but that's not an option for everyone. So I guess I'm at like this philosophical sort of fork in the road. Like, what do we do with these people? They're not this monster. They're men that we love. They're people that we love. So what do we do? We tend to focus, I've been thinking, on the smallest unit of relationship that violence can occur when we're talking about the prevention of violence against women. But it's not the only relationship where violence occurs to women. And I'm thinking particularly about Aboriginal women, Black women in this country. We put out spot fires here and there. We think, oh, you know, we'll lock this lad up, we'll put this lad in prison, or, you know, whatever. But if we zoom out, we start to see that actually this is a culture we live in a culture where violence against women is absolutely the norm and absolutely entrenched. So when we talk about preventing violence against women, we're actually talking about turning the tide of history itself. We're talking about, like, lately, sorry, I can just hear one of my kids just absolutely losing it in the background, just screaming. They're not unhappy, they just do this like weird kind of howl. Anyway, I think what we need to do when we're talking about family violence is locate the issue of violence against women in the context of this country being a colony, and in the context of it being like a white patriarchal place. So it's not enough to like think about the interpersonal ways that people harm each other, or that, you know, men harm women, or, you know, that people are harmed. I think we need to start zooming out and thinking about, well, what are the ways, even if we put out all of those individual spot fires, we're still left with the harm of institutions and the harm of policy. Things such as the way that we see, and we've seen recently, the way police deal with when women are harmed in relationships. And we also see that police themselves are often perpetrators and they're protected by the institution of police. We also see violence in the form of the way that women largely have been impacted with cuts, with welfare cuts, and also the rollout of things like the cashless card, which is proposed at the moment. We need to see this as violence against women. The way that we see coercion in an intimate partner relationship, why aren't we talking about that in the way that finances are controlled by the state in this way? These are just a few examples where I don't think it's enough to talk about the intimate partner level, or that kind of micro level, when we live in a culture where politicians feel free to do this en masse to women. I might wrap it up in a little bit, because we're getting to the end, and I think I'm going over time, which is weird because I was having a panic attack about not having enough time or taking up too little time. Anyway, I'm going to go. Thank you so much, everyone. I think you're all doing amazing work. I think we need to think about the ways that we can zoom out a bit, and the ways that I think we need to centre healing in
Thanks,
the way that
Nayuka.